There are moments so heavy with meaning that they seem to bend reality around them. Moments when time itself seems to pause, holding its breath. One of those moments came in the final hours of Pope Francis's life. He was weak. His body, once vibrant and filled with a ceaseless compassion for the world, was now frail and sinking. The weight of decades spent carrying the pain and hope of millions seemed to have finally worn down even his immense spirit. Yet, those who were there, a handful of trusted aides and spiritual advisors, swear that something extraordinary happened. As his breathing grew shallow, just moments before he slipped away, Pope Francis gathered what little strength he had left and whispered a prayer. It was not a prayer anyone recognized from the liturgies or the ancient rites. It was not a psalm, nor a blessing, nor a farewell. It was something else, a riddle, a warning, a prophecy. The words were barely audible, but those who strained to hear caught fragments that sent chills racing through their souls. The portons are opening. The espadas de fuego are descending. Prepare, the guardians, and then silence. The kind of silence that feels alive, pressing against the walls, soaking into the very bones of those who witnessed. At first, many dismissed it. An old man's final delirium, perhaps. The mind, clouded by pain and nearing death, reaching into a well of symbolic dreams, but something about the weight of his voice, the quiet authority that lingered even as his body failed, made it impossible to forget. And then, the signs began. Portons opening, espadas of fire. The words refused to leave the hearts of those who heard them. And in the days and weeks that followed, whispers of strange happenings began to surface across the world, quiet at first, like tremors before an earthquake, unusual alignments in the stars, sudden, inexplicable acts of cruelty and despair, weather patterns twisting into new, violent extremes, an unseen tension growing between people. Not political tension, but something deeper, something spiritual. And those who had heard the Pope's dying prayer began to ask, had he seen it? Had he glimpsed what was coming? Had his spirit, standing on the threshold between life and eternity, seen something most of us are still blind to? Because if he had, then his final words were not random. They were instruction, not just for those in the room with him, but for all of us. The idea of portons opening was immediately seized upon by scholars of mystical theology. Throughout history, gates, portons, have always symbolized thresholds, moments of crossing from one reality into another, points of no return. In biblical traditions, gates could represent entrance to the kingdom of heaven, or openings through which chaos could flood into the world. And in apocalyptic literature, the opening of certain gates often signaled the beginning of spiritual battles so fierce that even the angels trembled. If the Pope's vision was true, if gates unseen were indeed beginning to swing wide, then humanity was standing on the verge of something it was utterly unprepared for. A passage had begun, and what lay beyond those gates was not peace, but war. Not a war of nations, not a war of armies, a war for soul. A battle where the stakes were nothing less than the very destiny of the human spirit. It is no coincidence, some theologians argue, that immediately after speaking of the gates, Pope Francis spoke of espadas de fuego, swords of fire. In sacred writings, swords of fire are the weapons of the highest angels, blazing instruments of divine justice and cosmic warfare. They are not symbols of destruction without cause. They are signs that a decisive confrontation is at hand, a separation between light and darkness, truth and lies, hope and despair. And they are wielded when human hearts have reached a point of no return, when mercy has been offered and refused, when warnings have been given and ignored. In that moment, the world is not left abandoned. It is defended, fiercely, terrifyingly, by forces unseen. But that defense comes at a cost. Because when the swords of fire descend, nothing remains hidden. Every hidden fear, every secret bitterness, every concealed act of cruelty is laid bare. The gates opening are not just external events. They are spiritual openings, cracks in the walls of our comfortable illusions. And the fire is not just a fire of judgment, it is a fire of revealing, a fire that strips away masks and forces the truth to be seen. The Pope saw this coming, and his whispered prayer, desperate, aching, was a final plea. Prepare. Not your houses, not your wealth, not your political alliances. Prepare your hearts. Because when the gates are fully open and the fire falls, it is the state of your heart that will decide whether you stand or fall. And so the question presses urgently upon us now. As the signs multiply, are you prepared? Have you strengthened the walls of your spirit? Have you cleansed your soul of the shadows that cling in secret? Have you chosen which side you will stand on, not in words, but in actions so small, so daily, that only heaven sees them? Because the time is no longer coming. It is here. The gates are creaking on their ancient hinges. The fire is gathering at the edges of the sky. And you, right now, are being called to choose what you will become when the final light reveals all things. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the chilling meaning behind the portões se abrindo and how ancient texts, hidden until now, may hold the key to understanding exactly what is about to unfold in our world. And once you see it, you will never look at the world the same way again. When Pope Francis whispered of the portões se abrindo, many thought first of apocalyptic imagery, massive gates of fire, swirling heavens, cosmic cataclysms. But the true terror of the gates opening is far more subtle and far more personal. Because the gates he spoke of were not simply physical, not simply cosmic phenomena flashing across the sky. They are spiritual thresholds, invisible lines that divide what is known from what is hidden, what is safe from what is waiting. In every sacred tradition, gates represent choice points, moments when humanity steps beyond the familiar and faces the unknown, moments when our defenses, carefully built over generations, are peeled back, moments when what was once protected is laid bare to forces we can barely comprehend. The ancients feared such gates, not because they were superstitious, but because they understood something modern man has forgotten. Not everything waiting beyond the veil has our good in mind. And once the gates open, once the boundaries between worlds grow thin, it is not only angels that step through, it is everything, every fear, every hunger, every ancient darkness that has long been restrained, now finding a doorway left unattended, swinging wider with every passing day. This is not fantasy. It is not myth. It is a spiritual law written across millennia, in every scripture, in every whispered legend. And the most chilling part is this: we are the ones opening the gates, not through rituals or incantation, not through grand dramatic gesture, through something far more ordinary and far more dangerous, through our choices. Every act of cruelty cracks the gate a little wider. Every betrayal, every lie. Every time we turn away from compassion and run toward division, toward hatred, toward pride, the gate creaks open another inch. It's not a thunderous, cinematic moment. It's gradual, insidious, and by the time we realize what we've unleashed, it will already be too late to close them again. This is why Pope Francis, even in his weakness, felt the unbearable urgency to whisper that final prayer. Because he knew that humanity stood on the brink, not of destruction by some external enemy, but by the consequences of our own spiritual negligence. He had seen, in the slow erosion of faith, the mockery of virtue, the casual cruelty that flooded daily life, the quiet triumph of despair. He had seen that the locks on the gates were already rusting. The chains were snapping. The ancient seals were weakening. And once those gates fall open fully, the world as we know it will not be able to simply continue. There will be a shift so profound, so irreversible, that history itself will be cleaved into a before and an after. The before, the world we think we still live in, is fading. The after, the new world struggling to be born, is still veiled. But It will not remain hidden for much longer. The signs are already multiplying. Look around. An explosion of violence that seems almost senseless. A growing numbness to suffering. An unsettling sense, even among the most skeptical, that something is coming. Something they cannot quite define, but which gnaws at the edges of their thoughts when the lights are low and the world falls quiet. These are not random coincidences. They are symptoms of the gates being opened, and once the floodwaters spill through, they will not be easily turned back. Because what comes through the gates is not just destruction, it is a spiritual contagion, a poisoning of hope, a corruption of love, a twisting of truth so complete that even the purest hearts will struggle to discern right from wrong, good from evil, light from darkness. This is why the ancients placed guardians at the gates, not to keep people imprisoned, but to protect them from what lay beyond. Now, those guardians are few, and the gates swing wider with every passing day. And so the Pope's prayer was not merely an observation. It was a final alarm bell, ringing across the unseen realms, a desperate call to all who still carry a flicker of spiritual sight. Wake up, strengthen your spirit, armor your soul, because once you cross the threshold, you cannot turn back. Once the gates are open fully, you will face choices more brutal and more defining than any you have ever imagined. Choices that will not merely determine the comfort of your life, but the destination of your soul. And there will be no neutral ground, no comfortable middle. You will either stand in the light, even when it costs you everything, or you will be swallowed by the darkness, even while clinging to illusions of safety. This is the reality now rushing toward us, not tomorrow, not someday, now. The gates are opening. The forces gathering behind them care nothing for your plans, your dreams, your certainties. They recognize only one thing, whether your spirit is prepared or not. And so we are left with a single burning question. Are we ready to cross the threshold? Or will we be caught unprepared, swept away into a future we do not understand, by forces we can no longer resist? In the next part, we will descend even deeper, exploring the terrifying symbolism of the espadas de fuego the Pope spoke of, and uncover why this battle is not just coming. It is already here, raging invisibly around us. And the most chilling part is, most people will never even realize they are in it until it is far, far too late. When the Pope's frail voice uttered the words, espadas de fuego, few in the room could grasp the magnitude of what was being revealed. But deep within the layers of spiritual tradition, the symbol of the sword of fire is one of the oldest, most powerful, and most terrifying. It is not simply a weapon. It is a purifier. It is a divider. It is a force that does not ask. It demands, cutting cleanly through the fog of confusion and forcing a reckoning that no soul can evade. Throughout sacred history, the sword of fire appears at moments of tremendous transition. In Genesis, after Adam and Eve were cast from Eden, God stationed cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. A reminder that certain thresholds, once crossed, could never again be accessed lightly. In prophetic visions, swords of fire descend to symbolize the final confrontation between good and evil, moments when choices are no longer theoretical but immediate and unavoidable. The sword of fire does not strike randomly. It cuts along lines already etched deep within the heart. It separates not based on appearances, but based on unseen allegiances. Who you are truly, beneath the masks, beneath the pretenses, beneath the polite fictions you tell yourself. That is what the sword finds. That is what it judges. And that is what it severs. When Pope Francis whispered of espadas de fuego descending upon the earth, he was not speaking in metaphor. He was describing a spiritual reality already set in motion, an invisible reign of judgment, not from a place of anger, but from a place of inevitable consequence. For too long, humanity has played with forces it barely understands, manipulating truth, mocking virtue, blurring the lines between good and evil until they seem almost indistinguishable. But reality cannot be indefinitely denied, and when the swords of fire fall, they will fall without partiality. They will not recognize wealth or fame. They will not favor those who have built castles of comfort. They will not spare those who believe their cleverness can shield them. They will pass through all things, through every system, through every heart. And in that burning clarity, every hidden allegiance will be exposed. Those who have cultivated truth, quietly, humbly, faithfully, will find themselves suddenly ablaze with a light the world cannot extinguish. Those who have hidden darkness, even beneath the mask of goodness, will find that mask ripped away, leaving them naked before forces that will not be deceived. It will not be a time of bargaining. It will not be a time of delay. It will be a time of revelation. And most terrifying of all, the espadas de fuego are not some distant event still far away. They have already begun their descent. Not in the way movies imagine, with flashing skies and thundering armies, but in the small fractures appearing everywhere, in the inexplicable intensity of hatred flooding societies, in the shattering of trust, even among families and friends, in the silent wars raging within individual souls, wars of despair, of isolation, of quiet surrender. The swords are already passing through the earth, cutting, dividing, revealing, and each day that passes, the division grows deeper. Each day, the choice becomes clearer, not because the external signs become louder, but because inside, within the chambers of your own spirit, the confrontation intensifies. You feel it, even if you cannot yet name it. A heaviness, a restlessness, a rising awareness that the old ways of living, chasing distractions, numbing yourself with noise, postponing the deeper questions, no longer work. They no longer soothe the ache inside, because something is approaching, something that demands an answer, not in words, not in empty rituals, in the core of your being. Who are you, really? What do you stand for when everything else is stripped away? These are not theoretical questions anymore. They are the dividing lines being etched by the swords of fire. And soon, very soon, there will be no hiding. The moment of exposure is coming, the great revealing, where every soul will stand revealed in the full brightness of the truth they have embraced, or the lies they have clung to. This is the storm Pope Francis foresaw. This is why his final words were not a gentle blessing, but a warning laced with sorrow and urgency, because he knew that most would not be ready, that many would be caught clinging to illusion, trying to make deals with forces that do not negotiate. And he knew that the pain of the coming separation, the tearing away of what cannot stand in the light, would be immense. Yet, there is still hope. Because the swords of fire, as terrifying as they are not merely agents of destruction. They are also instruments of mercy. Mercy that refuses to let us live forever in self-deception. Mercy that demands we awaken before it is too late. And for those who recognize the call, for those who prepare their hearts, cleanse their intentions, surrender their pride, the swords will not destroy. They will purify. They will refine. They will mark the beginning, not of endless sorrow, but of a life more real, more luminous, and more anchored in truth than anything we have yet known. But the window is closing. The gates are open. The swords are falling. And now, in this fleeting moment still left to us, each of us must decide, will we be refined by the fire or consumed by it? In the next part, we will explore the chilling evidence that the signs Pope Francis warned about. The opening of gates, the descent of swords, are not just spiritual phenomena. They are manifesting right now in events unfolding across the world, before our very eyes. And once you see them, you will understand. The battle for the soul of humanity has already begun. As the world continues to spiral through unprecedented chaos, the signs Pope Francis spoke of are not just abstract spiritual warnings. They are becoming increasingly tangible. The gates are opening, the swords are descending, The spiritual and material worlds are colliding in ways few have anticipated. And these phenomena, once invisible to most, are now spilling into everyday life. First, the natural world, once serene, now shifting in response to a deeper, unseen current. Unusual storms, earthquakes, and celestial phenomena are increasing at an alarming rate. Those who pay attention can see the rhythms of the earth begin to warp. Nature itself seems to be protesting, responding to an energy shift that is no longer just metaphorical, it's physical. The skies have darkened in unexpected ways, not just through the literal black clouds of ominous storms, but also the figurative darkness that clouds the minds of nations, creating divisions, confusion, and polarization. Weather patterns across the globe are becoming more erratic, as if the very forces that have governed life on Earth are suddenly unbalanced. This imbalance is not accidental, Pope Francis warned. It's part of the opening of gates. These signs, the dissonance in nature, the uncanny global phenomena, are all part of a larger plan playing out behind the veil. The land itself has begun to respond to the forces unleashed by human actions and choices, to the opening of those invisible gates that are now spilling the weight of centuries-old spiritual tensions into the world. But what is even more disturbing is that, as the forces in nature grow chaotic, so too does the state of humanity. The world seems trapped in a vortex of fear, hatred, and confusion. In places where unity once existed, there is now only division. And it's not just happening on a political scale. It is infiltrating personal relationships, communities, and even the most sacred institutions. Families are fractured by differing beliefs. Friends are torn apart by ideas. In the wake of this division, souls are left adrift, unmoored from anything that could offer solace or understanding. People's hearts are heavy. The widespread sense of uncertainty is palpable. This is no coincidence. It is a direct manifestation of the sword of fire that Pope Francis foresaw. It is spiritual warfare, not fought with weapons, but through the hearts and minds of individuals. And those who have prepared their hearts, those who have guarded their spirits with integrity and truth, are beginning to see the effects. It is said that when the sword of fire descends, it doesn't just destroy, it refines. But for those who are unprepared, those who have not heeded the signs, the fire can be devastating. As the swords of fire descend further into the world, they are cutting through illusion. The lies people tell themselves, the falsehoods wrapped in comfort and security, all of it is coming apart. Those who clung to wealth, power, or the promise of an easy life are beginning to realize that these things cannot save them from the spiritual reckoning unfolding before them. The cracks are showing. Behind closed doors, where leaders used to hide their secrets, the truth is slowly surfacing. Governments and corporations that once controlled the narrative are now scrambling to maintain their grip. The sword is coming for them too, unraveling the systems that have fed off deceit and exploitation. The same forces are at work within the individual. The conflict Pope Francis foresaw, the invisible battle for the soul, is taking place within each of us. At this moment in history, every person must confront the true nature of their own heart. We can no longer hide behind the distractions of everyday life. We can no longer avoid the uncomfortable truths about the choices we have made, the lives we have led, and the things we have allowed to take root in our souls. And here lies the most profound truth. The sword of fire is not meant to punish, but to awaken. The pain, the suffering, the chaos. It is not the end, but the beginning of something far more transformative. Those who understand the spiritual significance of these signs will see beyond the destruction and toward the light that can only emerge through fire. It is not a time to be afraid, but a time to step into the light, to allow the purification of the soul. The challenge before humanity is not just surviving the fire, but embracing it, because when the fire burns, it leaves nothing untouched. Every layer of pretense, every mask will be stripped away, leaving only the raw, unfiltered truth of who we are. For some, that truth will be liberating, a chance to begin again, cleansed of the lies and compromises they have carried for so long. For others, it will be painful. It will be the destruction of everything they have clung to in their material lives, forcing them to face the emptiness that their pursuits have left behind. But it is through that destruction that something greater is born. Just as a forest fire clears the way for new growth, so too does this spiritual fire burn away the excess, clearing space for the divine to enter. And it is through this fire that a new spiritual awakening is being birthed. It will not be immediate, it will not be easy, but those who endure the fire will emerge stronger. Their hearts, once bound by the illusions of this world, will be open, ready to carry the light of truth and compassion that can heal the brokenness of the world. Those who are willing to allow the fire to purify them will stand as the pillars of light Pope Francis spoke of, holding the flame high for others to follow. But the question is, are you ready to walk through the fire? Are you willing to allow the sword of fire to refine your spirit? Are you prepared to be part of this great awakening, even though it means confronting the darkness within yourself? The time is here. The gates are opening. The swords are descending. And now, we must decide. Will we stand with the light, or will we be consumed by the fire? In the next part, we will examine the final stage of this spiritual warfare, how these divine forces are moving among us right now, and how to prepare for the trials ahead. The most important question will soon be, what will you do when the fire comes for you? As the swords of fire continue to fall, the ground beneath us begins to shake. It's not just a figurative shaking, but a literal one, an upheaval that's felt deep within the soul of every person. The signs are everywhere. Nations teeter on the brink of collapse, while individuals experience an emotional and spiritual crisis like never before. The gates that Pope Francis spoke of are opening wider, and the invisible battle for the soul of humanity is intensifying. At this moment in history, we stand at a crossroads. The fire has already begun to purify, but it's not just a matter of surviving the flames. It's about what comes after the fire. How will we emerge from the destruction? Will we rise stronger, more awakened, or will we be consumed by the very forces that are meant to cleanse us? Look around, and you can see the signs. People are waking up to a truth they cannot ignore. In the past, they may have pushed it aside, distracted by their daily routines or the comforts of their lives. But now, everything is different. People feel the shift. They sense that something profound is happening, something that will shape the course of their lives and the future of the world. We see it in the eyes of those around us. There's a quiet intensity, a restlessness that wasn't there before. Conversations that once focused on trivialities now turn to deeper, more existential questions. People are questioning their purpose. They are searching for something more meaningful, something that transcends the surface level of existence. And yet, for many, the awakening comes with pain. It's impossible to avoid it. The spiritual fire is not something you can sidestep. It's a force that demands attention, that demands change. You cannot remain the same after being touched by it. The old ways, the old comfort zones, are being burned away, leaving only the truth, raw, painful, and undeniable. But here lies the paradox. It's in this very fire that we find our salvation. The fire is not just destruction, it is transformation. And those who resist the fire, who refuse to confront the truth within themselves, will find themselves caught in the flames. They will be left behind as the rest of humanity moves forward, awakened and refined by the very force they feared. This is where the true test lies. In the moments of crisis, in the darkest of times, will we choose to face the flames, to stand firm in the knowledge that the fire is shaping us into something better? Or will we flee, clutching onto the remnants of the world we once knew, even as it crumbles beneath our feet? The transformation that Pope Francis foretold is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process, a continual shedding of the old and an embracing of the new. The purification through fire will continue to challenge us, to force us to confront our deepest fears and darkest truths. It will not be easy, but it will be worth it. There are those who are already beginning to see the effects. People who once felt lost are finding a new sense of purpose. Those who were consumed by materialism or power are now realizing that these things cannot sustain them. They are beginning to let go of the need to control and to grasp at illusion. They are opening their hearts, embracing vulnerability, and allowing the fire to do its work. In this process, we are learning that the soul is stronger than we ever imagined. It can withstand the fiercest of fires. It can endure the most intense tests. And in the end, it emerges more brilliant, more radiant than before. This is the promise of the fire. It is not to destroy, but to refine. It is not to punish, but to awaken. The fire reveals the truth. It burns away the impurities that weigh us down, allowing us to step into a higher state of consciousness. But this is only the beginning. As we continue down this path, the challenges will intensify. The stakes will get higher. The choices we make will become more crucial. Every moment will demand our full attention. We will be forced to choose between the comforts of the past and the unknown future that lies ahead. We will be asked to give up everything we thought we knew in order to step into the truth of who we really are. And for those who have resisted the fire, who have turned away from the calling of their souls, the consequences will be dire. They will be left in the dark, unaware of the opportunity that passed them by. They will be trapped in the old ways, unable to move forward, while the world around them shifts and transforms. But for those who choose to embrace the fire, for those who dare to stand in the flames and allow the truth to burn away the lies, there is hope, there is light. The transformation is not just a personal one, it is a collective awakening. The fire is not only purifying individual souls, but it is preparing the world for a new era, a new way of being. The old systems will crumble, but they will be replaced with something greater, something that aligns with the higher purpose of humanity. This is the great promise of the fire. It is the key to unlocking a new chapter in human history, one where the forces of light will triumph over the darkness. And for those who are ready, who are willing to accept the fire and allow it to shape them, there will be a place in this new world, a world where truth, love, and unity reign supreme. The sword of fire will continue its work. The gates will continue to open. And the battle will unfold, not with weapons, but with hearts and minds. And as we stand in the flames, we will learn the most profound truth of all. The fire was always meant to set us free.